Now, let's get ready to rumble!
Hey, thanks, Kelly, for that introduction. I feel like I should be introduced that way every week that I preach, so thank you very much. Today, I want to talk to you about going the distance. And back in September, Pastor Clay asked me if I would do this message, and right when he asked me, I knew what the message was going to be. God just impressed it on me. And so the first thing that came to mind was going the distance. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. The second thing that came to mind was back when I was in the Navy, so when this story takes place is in 90, 91, and 92. And when I was stationed in Great Lakes, in our barracks, when we had duty weekend, you weren't allowed to leave the base or anything like that. We would do, and there wasn't really MMA fights back then, but we would basically do MMA fights. And so we would clear out one of the rooms and take all the racks out of it. Racks are bunk beds, in essence. So we'd take all the racks out of it, and we'd take the mattresses and we'd lay them up against the walls. And then anybody could come in and fight. And we had these thin little pads for our hands and thin little pads for our shins and feet, and it was anything goes. And once you got in there, you were on your own. So there was rounds, but you didn't have anybody in the corner. If you forgot your water, you were out of luck. So you were responsible for everything. And I was a much younger man then, in much better shape, of course, and not necessarily too bright. And I participated in this a number of times. And guys would just pack into the doorway and in the hallway. And we had a couple guys that were callers, so they would be calling the fight out into the hallway so people knew what was going on, because everybody couldn't fit into the room. And then there was betting. You probably don't need to know all that, but my point is so after the fight, after going through a number of those fights, the next day, I still remember the feeling, and actually I can feel it in my body still, just from the punishment that I have put my body through my life. And just, when you're blocking and you're taking hits to the shoulder, and to the arms and to the side, and I just remember the next day being so sore, and it would hurt to breathe, and my knuckles, my hands, my elbows, my knees, they'd be all scraped up from hitting the ground and from the pad moving and hitting somebody. And, of course, my face, it's not that pretty now, but it really didn't look pretty then. And so I thought about that. It reminded me kind of what 2020 has felt like for me, and just kind of getting the snot kicked out of me, and then that feeling afterwards. And so that's been kind of a feeling of 2020, and I know that many of you have probably felt that way. And so as I thought about it, so today I just want to talk to you about a ring and boxing, and using all of this as a metaphor. So the boxing ring is one of the loneliest places on earth, particularly in the world of sports. And the reason for that is when you're in the ring, it's just you and your opponent. There's nobody else. Nobody is going to help you. Nobody's going to support you in that place. And it can be one of the loneliest places. And, funny, when I thought about this message and using this metaphor and this analogy, I had no idea that Mike Tyson was going to be fighting. And for those of you who don't know, Mike Tyson, he just fought recently. It was a draw, but I thought about Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson in his prime, love him or hate him, he was fierce. And he would come out in the first or second round, and he would just annihilate his opponent and knock him out. And to fight somebody like Mike Tyson, if you're preparing for a fight like that, you're spending 12 months, a year typically, preparing for that type of fight. Minimum to go into a fight, you're going to spend 4 months. But so somebody who's prepared, who's trained, who's done everything that they can to prepare for a fight, they would get knocked out first couple seconds of a round or into the first or second round. And for many of us, I think that's 2020. It's knocked us delirious. I mean, we're living in unprecedented times, and many of us have found ourselves getting bored, bleeding, burnt out. And we're dealing with so many different things, the pandemic, with riots, with fake news, with filtered social media, just so many different things coming at us. And the chaos and the stress and the confusion is like something we've never experienced before. And for many of us, it's just been a battle. And it's been a battle of just trying to stay upright in the ring. A battle where we have not had a reprieve or a break, and many of us find ourselves isolated, alone, and parched. And I don't know about you, but in this season, one of the things that has really ministered to me is music. And so before we go any further in this message, I want to share with you a song that has been a drink of living water for me. Check this out.
God, I'm on my knees again. God, I'm begging, please again. I need you. Oh, I need you. Walking down this desert road, water for my thirsty soul. I need you. Oh, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. Dead man walking, slave to sin. I want to know about being born again. I need you. Oh God, I need you. So take me to the riverside. Take me under, baptize. I need you. Oh God, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. And I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. And I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. And I don't want to abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me want to change. And your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. It's like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. It's like holy water on my skin. It's like holy water.
Thank you, Ryan, for that song. that song, just that holy water on my skin and God's forgiveness is something I've just needed to remind myself of, and God's grace and that being quenched by his holy water on my skin through this season is just something that I've needed to rest in. I hope that song blessed you as well. So as we move forward, I want you to think about going the distance. And so that's the title of today's message. I already mentioned that. And so going the distance in boxing means going all of the scheduled rounds. Typically nowadays, that's 12 rounds, going all of the scheduled rounds without a knockout or a technical knockout. So it means you go all the way to the finish and it goes to the scorecards. So that's what it means to go the distance. And so one of the questions I ask is, so what does it take to go the distance? And I want you to think about that. So one of the things it takes to go the distance is training, right? It's going to take perseverance. It's going to take so many different things. And as I thought about all the different elements that it takes to go the distance in a boxing round, you got to bring the same intensity in the last round as you brought in the first round in order to be able to go the distance. That takes a lot of training. That takes a lot to get to that kind of level. But there's one thing, absolutely one thing, that if you don't have, you will never get to the boxing ring. You will never be at that level. And once you're in the ring, you would never make it. And that's a good corner. And as I thought about having a good corner, I was thinking about a story in Scripture. And what does it look like to have good people in your corner? And so the story I want to take you to today is from Luke chapter 5, verses 17 through 26. And so it's a story of some men who are trying to get trying to get their friend in front of Jesus. And I'm looking at this today from the Passion Translation and just kind of set this up. So Jesus, he comes, he's in this certain city, okay? They don't name what the city is. And it says that one day many Jewish religious leaders known as Pharisees, along with many religious scholars, came from every village of Galilee throughout Judea and even from Jerusalem to hear Jesus teach. And the power of the Lord God surged through him to instantly heal. And so think about this. There's hundreds of people who have come to see Jesus, the miracle maker, the man. He's there in that city. And I want you to imagine a city with, taller buildings, 2, 3, 4 stories. And some distance away, there's a group of men, and they've got a friend, and their friend is a paraplegic. He can't walk. And their friend, I'm imagining, and I'm going to add to this story just some color for you. I'm imagining their friend has lost hope. He's lost hope. He has to rely on other people. He probably feels insignificant and maybe just wants to die. He wants his friends to go away, to leave him alone and not to suffer with him. But he has a group of men around him who are willing to do whatever they can. And they find out that Jesus is in town and they're like, we got to get him to Jesus. And so they put their friend on a stretcher and imagine them going down through narrow streets and alleyways and moving through the markets and the hustle and the bustle and the noise of the city and the people. Imagine when they get too close to where Jesus is and they find out that the street is just packed full, that there's no way for them to get through, and they move around to other streets and alleyways and they see that all of those are packed full as well. They look at each other and maybe one man could make their way, muscle their way through the crowd, but it would be a significant effort to get close to Jesus. And I imagine the man in the stretcher having a glimmer of hope initially, being defeated. All is lost. And I imagine the different things that might be going through his head. It's hopeless. I have no hope. I should have never got my hopes up. All these people are carrying me around and I have to depend on them, and they should just leave me here and let me go. But his friends, see, they love him and they're willing to do anything that they can for him. So they hatch the plan of climbing up houses and going from rooftop to rooftop to get to Jesus. And so that's just what they do. And imagine the man as they're handing him up 1 or 2 or even 3 stories, and as they have to leap across narrow alleyways from one roof to the next. Imagine the trust or the fear that this man had as they're passing and moving him along, all with a determination to get this man in front of Jesus. Imagine they arrive at the home and they look down and they see that there's no way. I mean, the crowds are pressed into the doors, to the windows. There is absolutely no way for them to get their friend in front of Jesus. And so they resort to the only thing that they have left: destruction of personal property. These men rip the tiles off of the roof and they lower their friend down in front of Jesus. I mean, imagine this. This would be like today you going to somebody's house you don't know and taking a chainsaw and cutting a hole in their roof and dropping down in the middle of their living room to like watch a TV show or listen to somebody or something. Ta-da, here I am. Imagine what that would be like. That would be shocking. Imagine you're Jesus sitting there and stuff starts falling from the ceiling. Like, what in the world is going on? And down comes their friend. And let's look at what Jesus has to say here. So the key verse in this for me is verse 20. Seeing the demonstration of their faith, Jesus said to the paraplegic man, "My friend, your sins are forgiven." I want you to see something here. It wasn't his faith. It wasn't the paraplegic man's faith. It was his friend's faith. It was the men who brought him to Jesus. It was their faith that Jesus acknowledges here. And as we go, the Jewish leaders are like, they're all stirred up. Who is this that, he thinks that he can forgive sins? And so Jesus, he replies down in verse 24, he says, "To prove to you all that I, the Son of Man, have the lawful authority on earth to forgive sins, I say to you now, stand up, carry your stretcher and go home, for you are healed." In an instant, the man rose right before their eyes. He stood, picked up his stretcher, and went home, giving God all the glory with every step he took. Imagine that. Imagine being in that place, in that scene, and just being stunned and overwhelmed by watching a man who's a paraplegic get up and grab his stretcher and walk out the door. All because he had a group of men in his corner who loved him enough to risk everything, to do anything for him and to get him in front of Jesus. And we all need men like this or people like this in our corner. So I want to talk to you about the corner. So we all need people in our corner. And as we look at the metaphor of the corner today, I'm using this metaphor for groups, for having a group of people that we do life together with. So that's the metaphor of the corner. And for many of us, we've bought into the lie that we can do life on our own. We don't need anybody else, or maybe we've been injured or hurt, and so we feel like it's safer on our own. And I want to help to dispel that and to encourage you to find some people that are in your corner that you can do life and community with. So when we think about a corner and we think about a professional boxer and the bout, you've got, I'm going to talk about 5 people. 5 people, I'm going to use them as a metaphor of different people that are in your corner. But for a professional boxer, you're allowed to have 3 people who come up onto the apron and come into the ring to assist the boxer between rounds. And then you've got a couple of guys who are down on the ground. And so for the purpose of this, so we're going to call the guy number 1 is the trainer. And so in boxing, you either have a trainer or you have a head corner man. The second guy that you have is the corner man or the second corner man. So for this, we're going to have a trainer, we're going to have a corner man. The third guy that's allowed up on the apron, that's the cut man. And then the guys that are down on the ground, you've got a couple guys who are handing up supplies. And for the purposes of this message, I'm going to call guy number 1 the water dude, and I'm going to call the other guy the spit man. Okay, it'll make sense here in a minute. But so that's the people we're going to be dealing with. So guy number 1, the trainer. So what's the trainer's role? So the trainer's role is to prepare the fighter for the bout. He He's the one who's laying everything out and making sure that there's a good strategy and good fitness coming into the bout to make sure that his fighter is in the best possible shape and the best way to win as possible. So when we think about a trainer for the purpose of this message, I'm going to say that's a pastor. That's a pastor or pastors at a church that we sit under. Their role is to equip the saints, to teach and share scripture. And so we want to be sitting under a good trainer. So here at Grace Place, that we have Pastor Clay and other pastors here on staff that we sit under. Okay, next is the corner man. So the corner man, he's responsible for the physical support of the boxer. This really is the guy that knows the boxer inside and out. He's the guy who wraps the boxer's hand before the bout. He's the guy who wipes the petroleum jelly on the face, and he knows not to put glob too much on because that can be a disaster for the fighter. But it's just enough so that when he gets punched in the face, it doesn't tear his skin open. It's the guy who comes into the corner and sponges his boxer off between rounds. One of the key things for the corner man is he has deep knowledge of the physical mannerisms of the fighter. He knows him so well, they don't have to communicate verbally. And he knows just by what's going on in the ring if his fighter's in trouble, and he has the power to throw in the white flag, the red flag, to cancel the fight. And so we all need somebody in our corner that's like this. We need a person who knows us deeply, and we know them deeply, that we're sharing both the highs and the lows of our life. Now, you don't have a lot of people like this in your life. It would not be good to have a whole bunch of people who are like this in your life, because it takes a lot of emotional energy to maintain those types of relationships. But one or two or three people like that in your life, it's absolutely, in my opinion, critical. And I am so grateful that I have people like that in my life, people who know me well enough to know when I'm struggling, when I'm in trouble, and they'll ask the hard questions. They're the ones who come to my rescue, even when I don't know what's going on, even when I'm trying to persevere through something. They're the ones who come in and say, Hollis, hey, I can see there's a lot going on. I can see that you're nearly depleted. And so we need people like that in our lives. The next one is a cut man. The cut man, this is a great person. So his role is to provide first aid between the rounds, to take care of the boxer and his needs, his health needs between the rounds. One of the keys for the cut man is so if you're bleeding, the cut man has to staunch the flow of blood. Otherwise, the bout's over. You lose the fight, right? They call the fight, it's done. So he's got to stop the flow of blood between the rounds. And so when I think about a cut man, and I think about people who are in my life and people who I want you to have in your life, you need people when you're bleeding, when you're just taking hits, somebody who's coming around you and who is bringing health, right? Who's encouraging you, somebody who's stopping the flow of blood, somebody who's able to counsel you and provide good technical kind of advice, right? You don't need somebody that's pouring toxicity into you or steering you in the wrong direction. So we all need a good cut man. All right, so we looked at the trainer, the corner man, and the cut man. The next, it's the water dude, right? We could think that that's insignificant, but the water dude, he's like handing the water up, and he's responsible for the hydration of the boxer. It's really important that you don't overhydrate before a fight. I mean, can you imagine what a mess that would be? If you have to go to the bathroom or whatever, you can't pause and do that. If you have a full bladder and you get punched down low, that could have some ill effects. But you don't want to be underhydrated either, because if you get dehydrated, you lose your strength. There's a lot of things with that. I don't need to explain that to you. But it's really important, that guy's role is really important, bringing that water and hydrating the fighter. And so I think about that in my circle, in my corner, and what I would want for you is somebody who's bringing you drinks of living water, somebody who's speaking truth in your life, somebody who's reminding you of who you are, reminding you that the lies that are coming in is not true, and telling you truth, speaking truth over you. We all need somebody like that in our life. And then finally, the last guy I want to look at is the spit bucket dude. I love this guy. And think about it, as you're going through a fight, this guy's putting up the bucket, and there's some gnarly stuff coming out of fighters' mouths. There's, phlegm, there's blood, and, they're rinsing their mouth out and they're spitting it down. And as I think about that, we all need somebody safe, and the key here is safe, that we can process stuff that's going on in our life. Somebody that if you've had a conversation with me, if you've done counseling with me, one of the things I like to say is spit it out and we'll clean it up later. Somebody that's safe, that you can just dump it out and get it out there and have no judgment, no condemnation on you, that you're just able to spit it out, and then somebody who's going to walk you through cleaning that up and giving you some good, sound advice and direction and being alongside you. So those are the people that make up your corner. I talked about 5 different people in that example, and you can have more than that. You can have a couple of water guys, you can have a couple of spit bucket dudes, and I wouldn't recommend having a lot of spit bucket dudes. In fact, I would say probably just 1 or 2. You don't want to be dumping stuff all over the place. It's not healthy for you or for anyone. But having those trusted few is really important. And so as we think about the people in our corner, one thing I want to caution you about is having the right people in your corner. This is so important. You want to pick the right people. Imagine if you're in a boxing match and you have just gone through a brutal round and you turn to go back to your corner, your gloves are down, and you're just exhausted, and you're going to your corner for first aid, and 1 or 2 people out of your corner just come out and wail on you. Imagine that happening. And I know that's happened to me, and I know that that's happened to many of you. And my encouragement to you is this: don't give up. I'm really sorry that happened to you, and it shouldn't have, and it was wrong. But that's not what real community is, and that's not what it's all about. You can find good community. It is a risk, yes, and you will get hurt along the way, and that's just part of finding good and healthy community. But learning to find the right people and not trying to load up a bunch of people really fast, or saying, oh, you're my guy, right, and not having really built relationship with them. So I just want to caution you there, and I want to encourage you. If you've been hurt, please risk and step into it, because it is so worth it. And then the other thing, as we think about groups and being in a corner, we can have this fear of I'm going to be stuck with these people till Jesus comes, right? And one of the things that I've been learning is there are beginnings and there are endings, and endings aren't a bad thing. And so having healthy endings. If you've been at Grace Place for a while, you've seen me actually have my group of men, my brothers, up on stage twice. I've done 2 different messages with my band of brothers, and we've just come to a place where it's a good ending point. And rather than lamenting that, next week, in fact, we're going to celebrate that. We're going to get together and we're going to celebrate the season that we had together. It doesn't mean we don't have a relationship anymore, but it just means that season of us meeting together as that particular group has ended, and a new season begins. I'll be opening a new table and journeying maybe with some of the same guys, and adding maybe some of you into that journey. And so we'll be able to start that. So it's a new beginning. So I just want to encourage you, if you think about it, a healthy group, they have healthy endings as well. And so who should be in your corner? Who should be in your corner, right? We talked about we want to be careful about that. So how do we find people who are in our corner? And Pastor Kelly and I were talking about this actually this morning. And she talked about, so when you want to find something of value, you go to certain places. to find that valuable thing. And so like if you have a 16-year-old daughter who just turned 16 and you're getting her a car and she's driving, way across town, and maybe she has to drive through some bad parts of town or whatever the case may be, you're not going to go to a junkyard to pick out her car, are you? I mean, you imagine 16 years old driving at night and her car breaks down in the bad part of town. No, you're going to do whatever you can to get her the best vehicle that you can with the resources that you have. Or if you're buying an engagement ring, you're not going to go to a bubblegum machine, right, and get the engagement ring. No, you're going to go to a place that has value. Now, some of you might have actually gotten your engagement ring from a bubblegum machine, and you probably did that intentionally, so I'm not negating that. But just in general, thinking about you go to some place to get certain things. And so how do we decide who's going to be in our corner? One good thing is to decide on your core values. What are the things that are important to you? And those don't have to be like this long list, but 3 or 5. And so, for example, if your marriage going the distance is important to you, you don't want to have somebody in your corner who marriage is not important, right? And sadly, I've seen this way too many times where somebody is struggling in their marriage and they share with their friend, hey man, I'm struggling in my marriage, and their friends are like, man, blah, 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 her, forget about her, she's a blah, 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 let's go out and party, find a new person, you need to leave her. And sadly, that happens way more often than you think, and it is a death spiral. I've seen it so many times, and so having the right people in our corner that align with our values so that when we do struggle in whatever ways, they're going to align with our values, it's going to be unified, and they're going to be taking us in the direction that we want to go. So that's a way that you can kind of figure out who is in your corner. And I want to tell you and remind you, it takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes vulnerability. When I would invite a guy to a table, I would tell him, so when you come, I'm asking you to do this. I'm asking you to come 4 times, and I'm asking you to come 4 times in a row before you make a decision. What I've learned over the years is so the first time I show up someplace, I'm uncomfortable, and I'm like, man, these people are whacked out. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't fit here. There's a whole bunch of things that go through my head. The second time I show up, it kind of is, maybe these people are like me. Anyway, so each time I get a little more comfortable and I understand it a little better. And after the 4th time, then I feel like you're able to make a good decision. And so I want to encourage any of you who are looking to step into a group to press through that. And the other thing that I told guys is, hey, if you show up 1 week and then you show up 3 weeks later, that doesn't count. You got to show up 4 weeks in a row, because otherwise it's hit and miss, and you're never going to get that consistency, and you're going to not find the vulnerability, right, and trust there. And then we have to be vulnerable when we're in those spaces. That's a word that freaks many people out, and it freaks a lot of men out. Vulnerable? Oh, heck no, man. Peace out, right? But we have to be willing to risk in order for people to know us deeper and more. And it is so, so worth it. Many times for me, even in this past season, I've wanted to run and hide from that. Many times I've taken some deep hits and wanted to press and move away from that. Many times I haven't wanted to share what's going on. But when I have people like my corner man who comes to me, who knows that I'm down, and when I risk sharing with him what's going on, it's so worth it. It is so worth it. And what I find is rather than that person running and screaming, they actually are more drawn towards me than repelled from me. So encourage you with time, consistency, and vulnerability. We all need people in our corner, people who are going to pray for us, people who are going to be there for us. And the corner in a boxing match is called the golden minute. So that golden minute consists of 3 things. That golden minute, it's that 1 minute sanctuary between the battle of each round. And the first thing that the corner does is it aids in recovery. And I don't know about you, but I go through a lot of weeks where I need somebody and some buddies who are coming alongside me and aiding in my recovery, whatever that might be. The other thing that they do is they give sound technical advice. It's really important in a boxing match. And if you're in a boxing match, it's like 1 or 2 pieces of information is all that you can handle. If you're like dumping a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to forget it when I get back in the ring, right, and get my head knocked silly. So 1 or 2 key pieces. And that's what I love about our groups is diving into those kind of things together. And then the third thing is motivate, motivate, motivate. In the season that we have just gone through, in the space that we live in, globally, I want you to think about this. Globally, the pressure, globally, the darkness, globally, all the things that are pressing down on us has never been experienced before, particularly with the reach and breadth of it. And so many of us are feeling that and feeling the weight of that and feeling the darkness of that. And we need people who are going to be light givers and bring light into our lives. And we need to be that for other people. And it turns out when you begin to do that and when you have people doing that to you, the darkness dispels. It doesn't mean that it doesn't come in. It doesn't mean that life is easy or anything, but things get better. Things don't seem as bad. Things aren't as bad as they are. And that's that golden minute. That's what I want to encourage you to find, is that community that you can gather with once a week, where you are finding that happening for you. I say a good group, a good table, there's a reason to laugh, a reason to cry, and life transformation. And life transformation only comes in a relationship with Jesus. And so we want to be around people who are Jesus followers, who are pointing us towards Jesus, who are loading us up when we need to be loaded up, and putting us before the Master's feet to get healing, to get teaching, to get restoration. That's my encouragement to you. And we always want to remember that though we're in a battle, the battle is not ours. The battle belongs to God. As I think about that battle, I want to share with you one more song before we land the plane here and wrap things up. Listen to this.